Welcome back, Rage Nation.
Definitely not PR friends.
Myself, Pete.
He needs to stop, fucking getting cute with his pick.
John the Mountain Man Stokes.
You're not putting them on my models, motherfucker.
Chris the Non-Tech Asian.
Put the tape measure up and get some wages.
You really frustrated me.
You walked away and you came back and your scalpel had been thrown across the room.
I'm just here so I don't get fined. I will share with you my one rage quit story.
That I'm a robot and I don't have a soul or personality.
This is going to be a really great opportunity for everybody to see how you effed up.
Welcome back, Rage Nation. We got Pete back with another episode, and with the Death of Guild Ball, we're going to put on another Malifaux episode. A lot of people are flocking to the Bushido and Marvel Crisis Protocol, but, I'm just loving some Malifaux, so more content definitely coming that way. And this time, to kind of work through the next faction, we did not leave them for last. I brought on Dave Gildea to bring us, get us some help on how to talk about the guild and all the ins and outs of their faction. So, how are you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing good, Pete. Thanks for bringing me on. Even though you hit the bottom of the guild barrel, I'm here to try to help.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, like we've been doing with all the other factions, this is just something that we want to put together for new players, people new to the faction, to just kind of say, what's interesting, what are some feelings of, how the keyword plays, and that's really kind of what we're getting into this. So if you're looking for a lot of top table tech, that we're not quite there yet. We're still mid tables here.
Right in the wheelhouse. Let's go. Let's talk about the guild.
We got the guild, which, talking about their background first, they're pretty interesting. Well, obviously they're the main part of the story, because who would you say the guild is, Dave, and what are they trying to do in the world of Malifaux?
All right, so the guild is basically the OPEC of magical oil, right? There was a bunch of mages that were all fighting, and then they were like, this is a bad idea. Let's just make it a monopoly. And so they did that as they were running out of soul stones, and then the magical portal to the other realm opened up, and they're like, this is sweet. We're all the powerful mages in the world, or at least most of them. And they took over the portal with their guild of mercantilers, and then they started a town, got kicked out, place closed, opened back up, took it over. So they're all about that power, right? They're all about that money. And they're all about the control of the flow of soul stones and the control of the local governments inside the actual, full world. So they're both the good guys. Some of their keywords are very we're the normal people trying to fight off the monsters of the world, right? The Neverborn and the undead and the wild mages that are burning down your houses, poor people of the world. But they're also the Inquisition, right? They're also got the elite keyword and with their false witnesses, and they've got the quote unquote journalists who don't really do the truth. So it's a mix of controlling the common people, control in the actual game terminology, and there's a lot of just trying to keep the common man alive.
Yeah, it's definitely a very much the man faction, right? They are the one that has the power, and everybody else is struggling to get that power and freedom from them. And it's almost like each keyword for the guild is actually almost a different department of the guild. It's kind of weird, kind of like you have Homeland Security, but then you also have, the court system. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's the special divisions. That's exactly how it is set up. They each, it started off as the Wild Wild West, and then they developed these special divisions. The witch hunters, they take care of the rogue magic users. The marshals take care of the undead, in theory. Yeah, the elite are the judges, but also the secret police style folks. So it's so they, in theory, all each have a role, but in the end, it's about control for a lot of them. Some of the masters are good people, right? The Frontier Master, the new one, Cornelius Bass, he's a good dude, right? He's just trying to make his way, keep people alive. He's a good dude. But some of them, like Lucius, not good dudes.
Yeah. I was gonna say I actually like the family keywords kind of backstory with the Ortegas, because they're kind of on the rim of the civilization, and they're pretty much just protecting from Nephilim, protecting from the gremlins, and just anything else that might just threaten mankind. So I like their backstory too, because the one that I read that was really cool was the one where the Nephilim kind of came charging out of the woods, and then the Ortegas came out to help protect. I think it might have been the judge, but it was somebody trying to flee from the Nephilim, and they just sitting there, guns blazing, horses are getting picked up by the Nephilim, and they made it back to the complex safely.
Yeah, that's the Ortegas. They're the monster. Well, they're the Nephilim hunters, right? So they, she has an enslaved Nephilim as her totem, who's like. So they're not all good, right? In every war game, like, everybody is bad. And so, they've enslaved this creature to tell them the secrets of its buddies so they can kill them better.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, pretty good. I mean, is there any specific story or keyword that you're like, man, when I read or when I listened to this, background piece, it was really kind of awesome to give you that feel of Malifaux?
So I like the family the most, but I guess it's kind of weeby, but I like Lady J, right? Like, her first in the guild book, in the main book, she was betrayed by McMorning, or the guild was betrayed by McMorning. Her lover was killed, and she's like seeking vengeance, and she's got kind of a dark history. It's kind of like Vampire Hunter D-ish style, where she's got a dark history, but she's using her powers to fight back against the evil. So I always enjoy that kind of stuff. It's like liking Dresden, right? It's like you want the guy who has the power that's fighting back against the bad things. I don't like the guild part where like Lucius is like being a bureaucratic a-hole, right? I don't know if we're supposed to curse, but like I don't like that part. That part I'm out on, right? I'm like, I get how it's powerful and effective on table, but I hate those guys. I came from the Arcanists. Like, I like the idea of like the freedom and searching for things, but like Ramos is as much as a dick as Lucius is, right? It's just one has a bigger mechanism behind him. Yeah,
and as far as the whole cursing things goes,
pretty sure I've heard this podcast's language barrier before.
Yeah, if you want to hear a good one, you should listen to that the Life and Death of Guild Ball. We definitely went off a little bit on those.
A little bit sassy that day, were you?
Oh yeah, a little bit. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the first keyword, and we'll just kind of just talk about the keyword, see what we like, see what's kind of interesting about it. We talked about this one already on the Arcanist one, but let's start off with the Augmented. So what do you like about this in the guild? What does it do for you? And what is old Chuck Hoffman going to bring to the fight that you like?
Chuck is one of the hardiest keywords in guild, right? You'll hear a lot of guild players talk about how very fragile everything in the faction is, and that's just not as true for Hoffman. Now, everyone knows armor is coming when you declare Hoffman, but it's still true. You're coming with a lot of armor. One of the really unique things that guild brings versus Arcanist is Fiona Gage, who the guild community is falling in love with because of Russian players in the World Cup's use of her. She's super good. She brings a lot of control with her Bring It and her ability to suck up hits, and then Hoffman has a lot of healing, has a lot of armor, so if you can distribute damage, you can't get anything dead. So she's an important part of how guild plays it. Personally,
so is she a versatile model?
No, she's a journalist model. She was a minor, part of the MNSU, and then she got in an accident, and I guess Ramos or someone tried to help her by like putting a metal plate on her eye, like a mechanical augmentation, and then she kind of was like, what the hell just happened? And she would get these like anger spells because of the mechanism, I guess. And then they kicked her out. And then Nellie's like, hey, I'll twist this to my own good. So she's actually a journalist model. She just is really good and provides something that guild often needs. And so is becoming, at least right now, the flavor of the month guild love. And so especially Hoffman, she's a mixed construct living model, so she gets fast, she can be healed, she can get her armor, she picks up power tokens. So all of the synergies that you've talked about in the ARC episode still exist. I really like the other model. I really like with him is Melissa Core. She's the specifically guild henchman. And she gets used into other keywords a lot too for me. She's really good because she's pretty independent and her gun is amazing. I'm a big fan of having at least one gun in general, and I think that's a strength of guild flat out, is that a huge ton of their models have guns. And so when you can charge, right? So with Hoffman, for instance, you make something fast, you can power transfer to push 2 inches. So there's a lot of little pushes. So you push 2 inches, you charge out 6 inches, you shoot out with your 12-inch gun. That's a 20-inch gun plus a blast if you were to use a power token for it. And then you can just run backwards 6 inches or redeploy 12 inches because you're fast, or take 2 shots and then run away. So it's a good hit and run piece. It's a good flanker because once you get her some power tokens, she can run around by herself. So for me, those are the 2 things that I really like. Some of the struggles with Hoffman I have is that I think he gets too much support. Like, I think a lot of time people build in tons and tons of support into him, so you have like 2 working models and a ton of support. But some people make that work. I'm kind of like Marshawn Lynch over here. Like, I'm all about the business. Like, I like the models that do the work.
Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting because the problem with that is if you only bring a handful of models that are actually going to get you your victory points, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And then you're also just you're forecasting what you're doing throughout the entire turn. So I can definitely see how Charles and his crew can like really pump up 2 or 3 really, key models. But then if you lose 1 or 2 of those, the game's pretty much over then.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that I'm not a good enough player to put all my eggs in that basket, right? Because I'll miss position, I'll underestimate a master I've never seen before. They're gonna punk me. I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose my Peacekeeper and my Joss or my Howard Langston or whatever it is. The main piece. I'm like, I'm gonna get this super busted model. It's gonna be the best model in all the world, and then it's dead turn 2, and you're like, what?
Yeah, I definitely think that's good for any keyword, but especially any ones where they have a lot of support models. You still want a handful of them, but you can't put your eggs in all that basket, when you're just starting a keyword like this one.
Right. Especially as a newbie. I think since this is more newbie focused, it's easy to imagine the supermodel doing everything, but activation order really matters. The other guy has a voice in the game, right? So like the thing you planned in your head often doesn't include the other guy doing something. Yep. And so I think Hoffman falls prey to that, or can fall prey to that if not careful.
And that's a big thing too, is everything looks good on paper until you get punched in the mouth, and then you're like, oh crap, I just lost that model. And then you got to adjust.
Right, exactly.
And a good example of that, and this could easily happen to Hoffman's crew, is, I was playing actually Nephilim the other day, just trying them out, just giving my friend a different look. And with Nephilim, they hit so hard that he was taken aback with, like, he had so many plans with a handful of models, but the Nephilim just came in and tore it up. And then he's just sitting there like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah, no, I've just got Nephilim everywhere, and they just punched me in the face. And learning how to accept alphas is an important skill.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I think Hoffman is actually good at is, he's got a lot of armor, so they can plan for it, but, you can make it impenetrable, you can heal him back up. So there is benefit to Hoffman being like, come on and punch me.
Yeah, I think that Hoffman's one of those crews where I would recommend to a new player to start, just because he's solid, he's a little forgiving, and you can still do some pretty cool stuff with him.
Yeah, and there's a lot of little pushes and movement. Like and there's a lot of guns. So like the Hunter or the Peacekeeper, one of the Peacekeeper is a versatile model for Guild. And one of the things that I find when I'm playing the Peacekeeper, and people in the Guild world tend to not think highly of him, is his gun is really good. If you can displace the enemy model 3 to 6 inches with your dude's gun, like, yeah, he can punch something 4 or 5 times, like, cool, like, that's awesome. I'm not trying to naysay that, but what's also cool is being able to shoot something 12 inches away and drag it towards you 6, right? So there's a lot of forgiveness that way. They just feel like, well, I need that guy over there, and I didn't set up my charges right, and my stuff's in the way. I shoot 3 times, that's not the worst.
That's something that I've definitely learned about playing Malifaux, is that chip damage is important. Like, if you don't think 1 or 2 points of damage is going to matter later, you're probably not thinking long-term plans. So just something for people to keep in mind, that, you do want to kind of plink them down a little bit and then bring them in and finish them off.
Yeah. Or plus flips don't always go your way, right? So you're like, I've got plus flips, and I'm a 7 versus their 5, stats, so I'm going to hit this, and you miss. And they had the higher card, and then you had in your hand and you missed. And you're like, well, I didn't kill that guy. And then having an extra gun is really nice, because then you can finish the job, right? You can take care of you can have another shot at the randomization of cards to try to swing around back your way to finish the thing you need to finish.
Anything else with Guild that makes him at least a little different or better than being an Arcanist?
The only other thing with Guild versus Arcanist, that people often talk about upgrades specifically, and Arcanist upgrades are really well thought of. Top first or second. If you're going to rank the upgrades, and Guild upgrades are thought of as relatively poor. I would bring out that that the No Prisoners upgrade, I think, gives some interesting flexibility in movement of some of your big beaters, so you can teleport like a Howard up into 8 inches forward, up next to something you just shot with a Hunter, or something that might carry that. Or the on the prowl part of it. So if you're, Melissa or somebody and you shoot a couple things with a blast damage, you suddenly are healing up if you're on the flanks and you're moving, you're pushing an extra 2 inches, and those extra 2-inch pushes come in big. So I think No Prisoners is kind of the highlight of their upgrades versus Arcanist, but it's I'm not going to say it's better than Arcanist upgrades, because that would be
a lie.
Yeah.
That would be a lie. As Mari Povich says, Dave said that the Guild upgrades were better than Arcanist. That was a lie.
Lies. Not the
One thing I do want to ask you though is, last thing before we move on to the next one, is the new Hoffman box is coming out and it has 3 of those stupid metal cats.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever foresee yourself bringing 3 of those?
You'd have to construct a pretty specific pool. I think they are better than a lot of, people get stuck on the big 10 stone models for Hoffman, I think, because it's like, oh, Peacekeeper, it's the best Peacekeeper ever. It's fast and it's got all the suits it ever wanted. It's great, but sometimes you need to spread out, right?
That's
and a Hunter with 3 power tokens turn 1, that's Gen Speed 6 and Deadly Pursuiting and Pouncing and dragging stuff off points can be really good. Now 3 of them,
two. I could see 2, but 3, that's 24 stones.
Yeah, it's a lot of stones. I mean, it would have to be some very specific pool that I can't think of in GG1, maybe GG2. That's one of the benefits of Malifaux, is that as the schemes of strats change, different models gain value.
That's true.
So, maybe someday in the future, but not today.
They might be planning ahead of us. All right, so the next keyword that we're going to look at is Mr. Cornelius Bass of the Frontier. So I've only played against this once, and there were birds everywhere. So I felt like, an Alfred Hitchcock movie.
That's interesting, because I've never, ever seen a bird on the table in the Malifaux. I think, so Bass is a case of only half of his keyword is out, and he's pretty polarizing. I mean, I would say straight up, for those newbies, be careful, since it's a newbie-focused podcast, be careful of taking too much of the online presence, the social media of the Guild to heart. There's a lot of bifurcation and opinions about things. So there's people on the Guild chat that Frontier is the best and I love it, and there's people on the Guild chat that it's the worst and this keyword's terrible, or clockwork traps, you need 8 of them, and other people well, that would never work. So just be careful about taking everything as gospel.
Yeah, and I think that's good for a lot of keywords, and that's the one things I like about Malifaux, though, is there's some people that they can make a model work and they really love it. And then you get somebody else and they're like, dude, I don't even know how you make that model work. So
right. Yeah, that happens a lot. I personally like the 4 and 5 stone middle, 4, 5, 6 stone models in Guild. But they are generally thought poorly of because they're squishy, but you can preserve them by just not moving them. Particularly the pistoleros are a favorite of mine that get a lot of flack on various places because they just die. I mean, they're 4 wounds with no defenses. If you let them get shot or attacked, they will die. That's true. But they're 3 AP for a 4 stone model. But for Frontier, one of the things to remember is that it's only half out, right? Because the Explorers part isn't out yet. The other thing that I really like about Bass is the Pathfinder finds its way into a lot of stuff. The Pathfinder has the ability to summon traps. It has extra movement shenanigans for other models, which is always good and necessary. Actually, that's one of the things that I would bring up about
concealment too.
A lot of concealment. You can get cover out of just concealment or being near a building. One of the trap things that is about the crew is the home on the range. So that makes, if you do that in wedge or flank, you're just going to get murdered turn 1, right? Or you don't move, it doesn't matter. But in like corner, maybe it matters more, right? Like some of the more distant deployments, one of the things that you have to remember is that deployments matter and like terrain matters. So they're one of the two keywords that have a fair amount of, they're all unimpeded. They're not unimpeded, but they ignore severe terrain.
Yeah.
So that can matter on a lot of boards, especially as we're playing Vassal games more recently, right? That's a bigger thing. Bass himself is a beast, right? He's got a 3.45 shotgun. He's got a pretty boss defensive trigger, so you're only going to get one attack for a lot of things. He's a pretty baller dude. His other attack action, Caught in the Quicksand, has a lot of like jank to it. So if you have like a peacekeeper or like a brutal emissary or something on one side of the forest, he can use that on the brutal emissary peacekeeper, and it magically teleports however many inches to the other side of the forest.
Yeah.
Bass himself is good. The Austringer is good holder of like Vendetta, so that's like a scheme specific guy, right? Because he has the only gun in the game that I'm aware of that ignores line of sight, concealment, cover, and in combat.
That's pretty
penalties. Good. It's 14 inches, so he can do that. So there's a lot of like, I don't know, potential there, and some people are starting to unlock it, but there's definitely some room for growth in his keyword to have a couple more options.
That's kind of how I felt when I was playing against it, and the guy that has it in our meta, he's kind of newer, so it's a lot of, oh, cool, I can do this, or oh, cool, I can do that. So you're right. I think that until we see the other stuff that comes out with it, we can't fully evaluate it. And I think that's one thing, if you're getting into Guild or the Explorers, that's kind of exciting to be a part of. Mm-hmm. But that just also means, like, you played a lot of War Machine too, Dave, and you know that there was a lot of times where there was a cool toy and it didn't have a model yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's coming. The other thing that I think that they're good for in today's packet and GG1's packet is I think they might be pretty solid at recover evidence. I still need to test some more, but they have two different models with Bring It, which is the same thing that Ironsides has from the Arcanist side, right? So just walk, movement +2, and take a swing. But, grabbing out that model that has an evidence token that you want over on your team so they can murder it and then pick it up without having to fight all of their guys.
Yep.
And that's pretty big. Or, there's a guy with a lodestone and ley lines standing next to, their pylon. All of a sudden, Baby Bass is yelling at him, challenging him to a duel, and they're walking away from it, and their master's yelling at him like, "Get back there, you schmuck." So like there's uses, there's stuff there. I found some good things, but I find that the traps have a lot of counters. Like you get excited about these traps. You're like, I'm going to control the ever living crap out of this guy. There's going to be like 8 traps. They're all going to like swarm them like chomper chews on them and grab their ankles and hamstring them, and then they just all die. Or the other team has terror and they can't pass willpower checks. There's just a lot of stuff. So I think that's your first blush look at them isn't actually the way they need to play often. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. So this is one that I actually feel like a decent amount of people like playing in the Guild, and that's Dashiell Barker's crew with the Guard. So this one's kind of interesting because it's a pseudo-summoning kind of list, right?
Oh, it's 100% a summoner. He's the Guild primary summoner, and people love him. Like, ever since this GG1 changes, people are, like, in love with Dashiell Barker. Which is funny because he's an ugly rock of a man, right? So,
well, dude, even I'm sorry, I can't take the Executioner like seriously.
Oh, you mean like the one that looks like he's dancing from a Mel Brooks movie?
Yeah, it looks like he's some kind of turbo nerd that got a hold of some Freddy Krueger claws and is like the happiest nerd ever.
I mean, he is a pretty happy nerd. Yeah, Guard. I played them 3 times on Saturday, and I was thinking about my rage quit stories, and I rage quit on this dude on Saturday night, and I felt pretty bad because he was a super nice, lovely guy, and he was probably excited to play. But I'd played 3 times that day with a new summoner that I never played, and my brain was toasty McToasterson.
So what made you rage quit that game there?
Well, I was playing, so I did a bunch of dumb stuff. And then by the 4th activation of turn 2, so he was playing Oni, another summoner for 10 Thunders. I was playing Dashiell, and I was playing a lot of support with Dashiell, and I was basically trying to play them like Oni. So I was like, I'm going to make this giant turbo nerd of an Executioner who's going to murder the world. You have 23 focus and fast. I mean 3 focus and fast, right? It's going to be great. That took too much time because he was about to throw this Obsidian Oni bomb into my face, which is one of the tricks that Oni has. So I was playing like this cheap, like, Walmart brand Oni style list that was just worse than his actual Oni. And I was
Yeah.
like, this isn't going to work. And he just like Fuhatsu shot off my executioner in like a single turn, and just like. And I was just like, this is dumb. And then I'm like, all right, well, the only other survival model, so actual guard models, is the actual boss. Dashel Barker is a pretty survivable dude. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
all right, I'm gonna charge him in there to hold up this Oni so it doesn't blow up this bubble that I've made. So I charge him in there, and then like he's doing okay. He gets attacked by a lot. It turned out his hand was really good, juiced, so he could summon well and attack me well. And so I'm like down to 5 wounds. I'm like, oh, it's okay. I got a lot of healing in this crew. It'll turn out fine. And then he had a Joragumo, which was like, no, still no. You're not allowed to heal. That's my bonus action. Suck it. And then,
nerd.
Yeah, suck it, nerd. Get fucked, nerd. And then he was like, oh, by the way, not only did I land that with the 12 I had, I also had this pocket 13 for a second Joragumo. And I was just like, and we're done. We're just done. Like, you ate my executioner, you ate my master, or you were about to eat my master. I can't summon. You're playing a summoner. I was done. I was just done. I was like, I'm going to get
good day, sir.
I'm just going to get angrier for 2 hours. Like, I played this stupidly. I understand your stuff's not actually broken. Like, there's people that beat it all the time. Like, it's a strong keyword, but it's not broken. Yeah. My stuff is also good. I played this stupidly. I did some dumb stuff, both in creation, list creation, and in play. And I'm just like, we don't need to prove this is a 6-3 instead of an 8-2. I don't want to be angry for 2 hours. So we're just, how about we're just done?
So I've definitely been, because trust me, there's been a couple of Malifaux games where I'm like, turn 2 or 3, it's like, all right, you already got this. You just want to and if it's in person, you're just like, do you want to play you want to rack up again? Yeah. But, obviously on Vassal, I'd be like, yeah, we're done here. But
right. And it was part of a league. So we need the score, but, yeah, it was my most recent Rage Quit story. And I thought I was pretty proud that I was like, no, I'm just going to it's fine. There's no reason for everyone to get angry and shout, that's not at him. Andrew was a lovely dude. He was perfectly nice human. It wasn't my opponent. It was just when you get raged out, when you tilt off the face of the earth, it doesn't make sense. It does.
So looking at him being a summoner, obviously there are different types of summoners. So when Dashel brings out these guard models, what is he trying to do with his minions and everything? Right.
So Dashel, so part of the guard or the guild sadness, right, is that guard is one of the only groups that brings out slow models when they summon, and they have the lowest summoning stat at 6, and you have to summon off of a enemy scheme marker, or the TN goes up by 2. So there's a lot of
tax.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of taxes, and so you're bringing the Guild Steward, who's a versatile model that people love in general, to get rid of the condition of slow on your model, and they upgraded the Dispatcher, which is his totem, to be a scheme marker and give him to be an enemy scheme marker and give him some card draw. So it's this very synergistic crew that you can do a bunch of things with. And I'm not a good guard player. I'm just learning guard, so I don't want to act like I, am God's gift to guard. But he does a couple things. He can make executioners, which is a 9-stone beater. So despite looking like a turbo nerd, they actually are pretty badass as far as
they can be nasty.
And you can summon them, right? So that's a 9-stone beater that just shows up out of nowhere. They can get fast, they can push 4 inches, that can be ride with me from their 8-stone model that he can summon, the mounted guard. They can get a free bonus action if the dispatcher is near them, or there's a lot of making your guys drop enemy scheme markers. So, right, maybe I shoot you with dash, make you drop a scheme marker, have summoned an executioner that's going to travel 25 inches and have 4 attacks when he gets to you with 3 focus, right? There's this magical Christmas land of super beater that can show up. The executioner likes Leadline Coat a lot, which is one of the upgrades of the guild that is pretty good. It's the one that's probably taken the most. It's Armor 1, Laugh Off, which is a great ability.
Yeah, Laugh Off is fantastic.
And then Shielded if you don't move. Shielded too. So, I deliver this executioner late in a turn. He survives. He has hard to kill. Now he has armor, and next turn he's getting shielded 2. He's got Juggernaut, so he can heal. There's some other healing in the crew or through a steward. So this big beater is going to just show up and murder you. The other thing Guard has, it's really fast. They have the mounted guard, so that's an unimpeded speed 7 model to start that can ride with me.
Yep.
When you kill it, it turns you just murdered the horse, and the guy on top is still a guardsman. They have some armor guys with some slow who also play in augmented. They have little dudes, little dogs, and little guardsmen that can run around. So they have a lot of speed. They have a couple models that have some staying power. Most of them are paper. Most of them are just guys, right? So it's guild. Most of them are just normal humans trying to fight off the monsters.
Which doesn't always work out.
No. It's not like, I'm a little metal man with lots of armor. No, it's like I'm a guy that got taught how to shoot a normal gun.
I signed up on Tuesday, and here I am.
Yeah, right. Like, I'm a 4-stone dude. Please don't murder me, Mr. Giant Devil Man with a sword. So they have a lot of speed. They have a couple badass beaters. Dashel himself is a pretty good brawler. He's got armor and laugh off built in. He's got a 2-4-5 axe. He's getting in there and doing some more rumbling than a lot of other summoners can do. So it's a mix of a lot of speed, a little bit of survivability if you tech forward in places, but not very much. I would not say they're survivable. And a lot of brawling. Their riflemen are really good. It's the sniper model. They can shoot you from 24 inches away. It produces a lot of focus. So it's got a lot of offense. It's got a lot of speed. That's mostly it. That's what the guard.
It kind of reminds me of like some kind of general or some kind of officer who's, summoning up these guys, and then he's kind of throwing them into the fray, barking orders and just throwing them into the melee. And some of them, it's not going to turn out good, but he just keeps throwing them in at him.
Yeah. I think that's that or counterpunching, I think, is the way the guard should play. So it's either running around on the flanks with these quick horsemen dragging along dudes with, fire raining down the field. Or they set up a fire base, the other team gets tired and tries to charge into them, and then you have executioners for counterpunch. Yep. But yeah, it's his quick action is foul mouth motivation, same thing as the steward. So it's literally this dude just like it's Patton yelling at his troops in the most exciting way possible. That literally heals them and gives them focus because he's cursing at them.
The next keyword that we're going to talk about is one that I haven't seen on the table, but I'm going to tell you, I love these models a lot, and that's the Marshall keyword with Lady J. So, yeah, this seems like a cool keyword.
Yeah, Marshall is pretty dope. Like, it's some of the most iconic models, right? Like, people talk about, like, Teddy out of Neverborn, but the Death Marshals, like the guys with the coffins, like, and they're leaping over them with their, like, dope Western hats, like, with their peace bringers, right? They look really cool, very iconic. Marshall is a great keyword. Marshall has a pretty low skill floor. So if you're starting out, I would recommend, one of my recommended crews is Marshall. They have a lot of good minions. They've got a lot of good options. Lady J herself is pretty boss. I mean, she's a weeb dream, right? She's like a lady in a greatcoat with a sword jumping around and blind. But they have a lot of healing. They actually have some defenses. Basically everything in the keyword has hard to wound because they've stolen all that resurrectionist energy, right? They're using necromancy. They're pretty quick. They've got a horseman who's really awesome. They've got Lady J, who's the only model in guild with leap, which is a great ability.
Yeah, I mean, she has crit strike on her sword too, and min 4 damage is nothing to sneeze at.
Right. And she can get an attack off of her leap. She's got a great sword, so she can get plus flips if she's not charging. She's the only model in the game that has mass condition removal with her tactical action. So that's amazing versus, Karis or McMorning or I don't know, stuff that like wants to mass slow you, like Rasputina or something. So it's that can be really good. Her crew also has a lot of injured stacking. You don't think about the math, I guess, when you're starting. You don't think about the math, but like dropping their defense and willpower by 2, like really changes the card math on what you're getting done.
Huge deal.
Huge. And so she has a gun, but it's not a gun, right? So she can shoot into melee, or you butterfly jump away, and suddenly she can finish the job. Like I was trying to kill Sparks LeBlanc out of Foundry the other day, and I chopped it with my sword, and I cheated in to get it. And he's like, "See ya, sucker!" And he ran away. And I'm like, "Well, I just used my necromantic mental energy, and I try to kill you again." And he's like, "Wait, she has a gun?" I'm like, "Yeah, she does. She's amazing. She herself is really good. The judge is one of the best beater models in the game. He's slow, or she's slow, but he hits with the enchanted katana. She hits real hard at 346. So her model hits hard. It's pretty survivable. It's got a lot of options. I like Marshall a lot. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think that any crew that has like a very direct purpose and it's all spelled out pretty much on the cards, it just does it in a specific way in different ways, is definitely a great faction for people that are just getting into the game or just getting into a crew. This is a really good one to kind of cut your teeth on the game and figure things out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And as my local meta will tell you, I hate Obey. Like, I started the game mostly with Marcus. Obey is terrible for Marcus. Like, really bad. Unless you know what's happening and plan for it. It's horrendous. And they have a model with a suited Obey in the jury. And they have the Domador who has a suited Obey for undead. So they have sources of Obey, and I mean, if you're just starting Obey, it won't mean anything to you, but like, believe me, it is one of the most flexible, if not the most flexible rule in the game, and it is amazing. So they also have Obeys, which is...
Well, Dave, I am playing Zoraida for the first time on Thursday, so I'm going to be obeying the crap out of it.
It's really good, man. When you live the dream, it's so bad, right? So a different war story. This new guy first was beginning to played a couple henchman hardcore. He's like his first full game. He's playing Big Hat, which is a tall order for someone new. He's a veteran war gamer, but it's still tall order. I'm playing Marcus, and I didn't realize that the guys that obey in Big Hat could obey other stuff. I thought it was only small stuff that they could obey, but it's not. They just get the suit baked in when it's a lesser cost.
Yep, so they can do it to you.
Yeah, and he's carrying around a 13 mask, and so he summons this dude and then busts out his 13 mask to obey my Cerberus, who then like had like a focus and 2 or 3 upgrades and was like preparing to go eat summer. And he's like, he's going to charge that guy and use all his upgrades and his onslaughts and his focus. I'm like, that's you ate like, I don't know, 8 points of my guy, like my 8-point model, and wasted 6 of my AP or something. Like, it was so bad. Let this guy live the dream. I walked right into it.
And you too can do that if you play the Marshall keyword.
Yeah, and you can. That can be you. My enslaved Nephilim obeyed a spider swarm the other day. It was awesome.
It was hilarious.
It was great. But obey. It's a great rule.
Yeah.
Or terror.
Depends on which side of it you're on,
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into another dual faction master, and this one, I don't know if you're new to the game. I don't know if you play Lucius right away. The elite keyword and mimic keyword it seems like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I have not played elite. I've not played with elite personally, but I'm in a meta with Jesse, who's achieved internet fame with Guild, and so Lucius is one of his babies, and I've gotten raffle stomped by Lucius's machine. The first 2 games I ever played was against a Lucius player. It feels ridiculous. They will take 83 actions. Like, that was my first AP. Like, wait, what? That guy obeyed that guy who did something to this guy, and now that guy's attacking me. Like, it's...
And then you draw a card.
And I lose a card, and I might be injured, and I'm staggered. Like, what is going on?
What's going on?
Yeah, Lucius is very complicated. His power in this particular season is under a lot of debate, I guess. His keyword models, like lawyers, are really good. They're considered very good. One of his key models, which I'll bring out, they cycle cards, or they clean your hand. So they have a rule called tools of the trade, and they pick up the top card of your discard deck and put down a card out of your hand, and then get the suit of the card that they put out of their hand. Yep. So you just flipped a red joker on that defense that you wanted. Cool. Like, pick up that red joker so I can use it again, put down this one of masks. All of a sudden, I've got masks so I can get my obeys, another obey model, and I've got 2 uses out of my red joker. They're a really good model. They do a lot of stuff, but they're a support model. They do a lot of indirect things. Not a good starting model, but something to start looking at. That's one of my like, how far up you up the skill ladder, kind of. As you're growing as a player, do you understand obeys? Do you understand why the guild lawyer is good? Once you achieve that, your skill has, you can consider yourself like
leveled up.
you can level up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that when we were talking about Lady J and how, she has a direct path, Lucius does not have a direct path. You have to figure out how you're going to use all of this manipulation to achieve the goal of scoring points. And if you're just doing all this random nonsense, you're not scoring any points.
Yeah, you can get really caught in the machine. And I think that's one of the problems I've seen with a couple of guild players that I've played against is that they get caught in the machine of what they're doing. They're like, oh, but look at all this stuff I just did. And but nothing happened. Black box.
I'm drawing so many cards.
Right, yeah. Black box, what you did, you put in an AP, you put in a Lucius AP as the input, and the output was what? 0 points. You know what I mean? People get really caught up in the doing things for the sake of doing things with Elite. So I'd caution, especially newer players, don't get caught up in the game is won by scoring points. I mean, if you find it fun just to do like the super one activation turn thing because that's good for you, then cool, go for the gold. Have fun. But if you're looking for strength and power in winning the game, then you just be careful not getting caught in what I think of as the black box of like when you get nothing out. You have to put the action in and the cards in and get useful scoring out. And Elite doesn't do that clearly.
Yeah, so the one thing I was going to ask kind of moving forward, because if you want to know more about this keyword, definitely go listen to what you were talking about with the Elite and Mimic keyword for Third Floor Wars. They did a great deep dive on it. But the main thing I wanted to ask you with Agent 46, do you have any experiences with him, or what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah,
he did get an errata.
He did, and that was a very needed errata just to open up design space, to use a war machine word, Warhammer word, or Wormhorse word. But he is like the epitome of this getting caught in the black box, right? I think he has a lot of interesting uses, primarily ruthless. So if you hitting Jackdaw, or if you're hitting Jackdaw is the primary terror master, but if you're hitting something that has a lot of terror or manipulative, ruthless comes in big. But I think a lot of people get caught up in like, I can make this guy have so many unavoidable attacks, and you're like, just slow your roll. He is good. He brings a lot of flexibility to the crew, kind of like Miranda does for Marcus. He's just, because you can copy out different weapons, that brings some variability, but he's not like, the be all end all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think people were just, because you can't cheat against his attacks. So I think people get in their head that, this is going to be amazing and I'm going to do so much damage with him and they're not going to be able to cheat. But that might be just one of his attacks, and then maybe you miss it still.
Right. You still have to hit the attacks. And now, if you're doing that, you can't both mimic someone else's attack and get the no cheat, which is what they changed about him. But he still has a 2-4-5 crit strike or execute.
Yeah, because it says this model's attack actions.
Yeah, that was the big change they made, is they wouldn't allow you to steal other people's actions and not let you cheat against them. But his individual attacks are still pretty good, right? Like execute is one of those things that individually isn't great because people have stones or cards, but against Lucius, he's draining, when you're using him well, he drains the hell out of your hand, and then execute becomes dangerous, right? When
Terrifying.
you have, right? So then execute comes more into play for his crew. A 2-4-5 with crit strike that you can't cheat against, still pretty good. Suddenly that's 3, 5, 6, no cheats. Or I've got a decent. Lucius has a lot of card draw when used correctly. So maybe I've got a high ram. He's a henchman, so I stone it. Now I'm hitting you for 4. A 4, 6, 7, and you can't cheat against the attack, right? Like that's the fear of him. Is that worth all the effort? He has stealth. He has ruthless. He can still draw you cards. Like I think there's uses. He's just not the magical Christmas land guy people want him to be when they first read that rule, the cheat rule. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that definitely makes sense. So the cool thing is because I got a bunch of Neverborn stuff, and actually his crew came with the Neverborn stuff. So I started looking at him, and I'm really excited to start kind of messing with it. But he's definitely one of those masters where I feel like you got to have at least like 10 games in just to figure out what it does and how you get points off of it.
Yeah, and he has a lot of movement shenanigans, right? So he's pretty paper, right? Once again, the theme of Guild, the best defense in Guild is placement, which is one of my big themes for Guild as I've been picking them up and learning and trying to become a better player is focusing on the basics, right? So they don't have a lot of armor or hard to wound or hard to kill or a bunch of whatever other defensive abilities you want to list, right? They don't have a lot of that in a lot of their keywords. So the only way they stay safe is being in the right place, using terrain. I
Basically
prefer,
draining your resources.
yeah, draining your resources. Well, I've got better cards than you, which is both what the elite does and journalist does. That's one of the reasons I like 4 and 5 stone models is because now you have to spread out attacks, right? So you can't like charge my single 8 stone model and kill him in 2 attacks. Now you have to get 2 different places to kill the 2 4 stone models. But it's a very fundamentals driven faction, and Lucius is one of those things, right? Like hand control, activation control, positioning, all important. Otherwise, he just folds, right? If you get something into you that is dangerous, your lawyers are dying, your investigators are dying, Agent 46 is dying. He only has stealth. Stuff dies.
Yeah, and the next crew we're going to go into, you mentioned, kind of does similar things, and I'm curious to kind of hear about it because, I mean, when I see this crew, I just think the Newsies, and I don't know what the hell they do. So we have the journalist crew with Nelly. So I mean, what does this writer and wannabe journalist do?
So Nelly, if you ever read or listen to a Breachside broadcast of Nelly stories, she plays exactly like her stories do. They annoy the ever living fuck out of you. Like, like if this person existed in your world, you'd want to throttle her. And she does that on the table, right? She puts up her aura that makes, as soon as you get distracted, you get slow. She's going to stun you. She's going to drain your cards. She actually does a pretty good amount of damage once you get the machine rolling. She's pretty survivable. She has a good defensive trigger that lets her move out of combat.
Yeah,
so
Squeal's good.
Squeal's good. And it's built in, right? So, you can work around it, but that's something that people have to work around with stunned and, no defense triggers, like with an Executioner Claw or whatever. They have to work around it. And then you bring some Leadline Coat, maybe, or she heals every time she interacts. So her job is to be the most annoying creature in the face of the earth. And a good Nelly, it's another skill challenge, right? So a good Nelly versus a bad Nelly is night and day. A good Nelly is terrifying. It's you won't have a hand, everything will be stunned. She does a fair amount of damage. The first thing everyone sees is so a guy in our North Carolina chat brought this up the other day, and he's new. He's like, I don't get it, this interact action. So one of her things is a bunch of her models have it is headline secrets exposed. So enemy only, target must take the interact action even if engaged. And someone's like, well, you can take the interact action and choose to pick up all markers around you. Which, right, you're thinking I'm going to get all my ski markers that I ever wanted this way. And who control, it's just it doesn't work the way you first imagine that ability will work. But you layer that with most of her models have within 8 inches, they'll gain a focus and draw a card if you interact. So whatever my main part of my attack did, then I get to draw a card and interact. If there's a lawyer near you, you're discarding a card. If you're trying to scheme, like the guy walked 5, your model walked 5 and schemed to get the scheme where he wanted to, now his options are drop another scheme or pick up the schemes that he doesn't want, right? So it's annoying. She's got a lot of card draw. She'll have a lot of focus. She actually puts out a fair amount of damage in kind of sneaky ways. She puts out a lot of conditions. She's just annoying. And it doesn't work. It's one of those things that builds synergy. A good use of her builds synergy in a very natural way, right? So unlike the way I played Guard the other day or bad Lucius players play him, the synergy isn't forced, right? So you can get into the black box forcing, forcing these like super combos that you've got to imagine in your head. Her keyword individually going, oh, that's not that good, but okay, so now I've drawn 4 cards. 6 of my models now have 3 focus, and you have no hand, right? All sound, now that's really good, right? But individually, they're like, oh, what does that do? That's nothing. So she's another skill check caster or master. She's annoying. She's a control master with a pretty fair amount of damage, and she's definitely a skill check.
Yeah, one thing I will say is when I look at her crew, like the models do not look interesting to me at all until I get to the undercover reporter, and then I'm like, okay, that's hilarious.
Right. Right.
A dude hiding in a barrel.
Yeah, the undercover reporter gets used a lot too. So I'll raise that as one of the like models that will be brought up a lot, especially as new players. Like, wait, what else? Like, I have Marshall. What else do I need to like look into? Undercover reporter is one of the things that you want to think about getting. He gets purchased out of keyword a lot. He starts buried. He can make your own guys interact while he's buried. He sends one of the other guy's minions back to the starting line, which can be huge, right? So someone's breakthrough is not a scheming, or someone's trying to score sabotage with their minion. They get down the first marker, like, yes, I got this. All your dudes are up there in the front, and you're like, no, back to the start, me bucko, and then that's fine. He does a lot of stuff.
The big thing with him too is, I mean, at the end phase, he's getting to push 4.
Yep.
And then if you look at his bonus action, you can just get rid of a scheme that probably is around.
Right.
And you can just be like, all right, I'm going to move 6, and then I'm going to go do the thing I need to do.
Exactly. And there's no flip on his tactical action, so you're not burning cards or black jokering that important flip. He's got arson, which comes up just eat other people's scheme markers. Undercover reporter gets brought up a lot, both in keyword and out of keyword. He's one of the all-stars to think about.
So that's one of those boxes to just pick up just because it's good.
Yeah. He's definitely going to see action as you start branching out of whatever your initial chosen keyword is.
Okay, and I just got to ask before we move on, what the hell is this printing press do? It's just like, it's such a lame totem. It's just like, what is she doing with it?
Oh, poor printing press. I don't know. I think it's pretty funny. The little spider printing press is just like walking along. It feels almost like Harry Potter-ish, just like printing out stuff. So things that the printing press does. One, Arcane Reservoir, huge, right? So people talk about the Arcanist upgrades all the time, like we were talking about, and they bring magical training simply for Arcane Reservoir. You get it as a totem. It's pretty good. Exactly. 2, incidental damage. If the model ends its activation within 2 of this model, the model suffers 1 damage. That's also front of card ability. Now, remember, Nelly's making you slow and distracted and stunned. So killing the armor 2 guy or getting away from it with your single action because you're slow, it's getting harder, right? So now I'm chipping in some damage. I'm being annoying and in your way. He also, the other big thing he has is you can use hot off the presses as his attack action to give something burning 2 and then push the target 4 inches. That doesn't have to be an enemy. So
that's kind of cool.
My guy gets burning 2 and pushes 4 inches, can be plenty fine in a lot of situations.
Oh, yeah.
You can heal him so he comes back. The other big thing is that he's got more headline exposed, which one of Nellie's things, Allison Dade, which is one of her henchmen, is when I then 2, I can control your interactions. So suddenly you're not making your choices. Now you're interacting for me. So I'm getting kind of free AP. He can become a 3, 4, 5 damage dealer because you gain 1 damage. It's an extra 1 damage when you're within next to a marker. And remember, my hand is juiced. Your hand is not. So that's all coming through bigger. And then synergy, right? So all the stuff that Nellie wants to do with her extra auras and extra uses are coming in big with him just being engaged. So one of her abilities gets much beefier if the target is engaged. So her one more question, if the target is engaging any models, it suffers 1, 3, 4 damage. So your spider press runs up, stands next to the guy, maybe hits him for 3. Now she's just like asking the guy annoying questions as your little spider is doing a dance next to him, and suddenly you're doing 1, 3, 4 damage, plus 1 with slander on her things. Now it's 2, 4, 5. She's starting to do some damage. You're slow. It's against willpower. She's got used hand and focused. So it's a build piece. It's by itself. It's like whatever. But when you build the interactions, it gets to be doing some stuff.
All right. Well, I guess first time I see that keyword, I'm gonna not scoff at the printer because it'll beat me, I guess.
Yeah, you're like, whatever. It's 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4 is a pretty basic stat line, right? But it's not just 2, 3, 4, right?
On a totem, that's decent though.
Yeah, right. In armor 2 and 4 wounds, it can heal itself. Doing some extra damage just by standing around. That's fine.
All right. Well, moving on, we got the Ortegas with the family keyword, and aesthetically and thematically, this one is one of the good ones. But I'll definitely say, like, seeing Guild played here and there, I feel like they don't get a ton of play. So how do they operate?
All right. So family is like the keyword that I started with, right? Like that was like Guild. Like what has flavor? What's interesting? Family. So this is my opinion. I think what their plan is to win through AP, win through more AP, right? So their 2 keyword abilities are, when you concentrate, you get to push 4 inches towards an enemy, and you can discard a card to let any family member with a lower cost than you take an action. So, all of a sudden, your 9-stone henchman beater is getting another stat 7 attack from discarding a 2, right? And he's focused because there's a lot of way to generate focus.
Yeah.
All of a sudden your like Perdita herself gets plus flips if you're healthy. So she's great at deleting scheme runners, right? So like the way I think of them, and maybe this will be proven to not be true as things go on, but she is great at like, I'm going to win the AP battle because I'm going to murder your 6 and 7 stone guys in like a shot, turn 1 or turn 2. I'm going to then ride my AP efficiency through Aporel to winning this fight, right? So like it's flimsy keyword, right? Things will die. They don't have a lot of defenses or any. They win through AP efficiency, right? So I'm going to win. I'm going to kill your stuff pretty damn quick. My stuff will fold pretty quick as well. So I'm hoping to kill your stuff, enough of your stuff before you can eat my big boys, and my little guys will hopefully be good enough at scheming and having enough AP. They are good at scheming. They're not like good schemers. They just have a lot of AP.
The thing that I find I think the reason why they struggle sometimes is because there's a couple problems with that keyword, right? Is when you look at Aporel, you have to activate with somebody. 1, you have to be within 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, it has to be a lower cost. So I think it'd be different if it was just, hey, just do a model right after this one. Yeah. Because there's 2 requirements there that you have to meet. And if you don't, then you can't do it. And there's just sometimes where it's like, I have to activate this model. So there's just sometimes where you're not going to get it because you have to activate and respond.
Right. And you only have so many cards, right? It is. So earlier, I think in this, I've certainly said it in other places, but I think I said it earlier in this podcast, is that Guild is a fundamentals faction. Family is a fundamentals keyword. The reason why is you need to plan ahead a little bit. You need to have card management for your hand. You need to assess threats and kill the right things correctly. You need to position correctly because all of their movement stuff was pushes in general. Like the enslaved Nephilim scares something and pushes it. Grandma in a wheelchair can actually yell at you and has like a pseudo obey. So she can get people to do things. Like Nino is a really key piece in my view. He ignores the 6-inch part of that, of the Aporel and the family values, which is a trigger on a lot of their attacks. And he has it built in, the family values, so he can force Perdita. He's the only one of a couple models that can make Perdita focus, which is super handy because using your master's AP to actually concentrate sucks.
Yep.
You do it when you got to, but you much rather her show up before her activation with 3 focus, right? So it is strong. It's a strong keyword in my experience. It just you can't play it. You cannot play it like Hoffman. It just won't work. And if you just rely on, I'm going to stand out in the open and shoot everything before you get to me, and I will kill you all. Your opponent has way too much voice in that and can use terrain, or they know that's coming, so they bring the captain or a snowstorm or something in Arcanists, right? They bring stuff that stops that plan. You need a secondary plan, and I think family really rewards learning the parts of the game that matter, right? AP is the master of this game, right? Like and they are an AP keyword. They Op or L and Bravado are great AP syncs, right? And so you have to be lesser than them, but I really like, that's one of the reasons I like Monster Hunters and Pistoleros is you can run around. It has to be equal to or lesser than. So, two Pistoleros running along can just Op or L to each other, and they can be fast. Yep. So all of a sudden you're getting 7 AP out of 8 stone, right? Now, if something breathes on them, they're dead. They're dead, right? I'm not they're tissue paper wrapped in nothing, like a little bit of water, so they're even weaker tissue paper. But I really like family. Family's a great keyword. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of flavor too. Like a lot of their characters have names, right? This the various members of the family.
Yep.
Frank is really strong combat guy. He's a swordsman, but he has a good 245 pistol. He's a big thing that a lot of people like, and is some of the guild chat people have been playing some more family. They've been really praising Frank. I'm not a big Frank guy, but I can see his value. I can see his use. It's just the way the pools and deployments I've been playing family in, at least so far. I've not been playing him. I've been playing them with a couple of versatile models because I've been trying to feel out the versatile models in guild. I like Peacekeeper out of keyword. A lot of guild people don't. Because well, that's not as good as Arcanist Peacekeeper. It's not as good as Hoffman Peacekeeper. I'm like, yes, you are not putting more AP and stones into it. But busting out an armor 2 model out of nowhere is really good. If something needs to just stand there in the middle while Perdita shoots it to buy you some space, I think it's good. And it's one of the only armor pierces. I like the Peacekeeper. I like its gun, as I said about earlier. So I haven't been using Frank as much. Because only Perdita can Op or L into him, right? So so he's not getting the AP efficiency, but he has flurry. He's a stat 7 sword. The man can do some work, and certainly if you wanted to play with Frank, I don't think you're wrong.
I definitely think that you need, like you said, hand discipline would be a big thing with them and other people as well. But I'm going to tell you, just me straight up, sometimes I'm just sitting there looking at an attack and I'm like, man, I really want this to go off. I'm holding this for a different situation, but screw it. I'm going to slam it down.
Oh, the bloodthirst gets you.
Yeah. I'm just like, no, this is hitting.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I did that the other day with guard. I used a card that I shouldn't have used to try to hit something. But the other thing that I get is the bad money chasing good. So you spoke to Jeremy for the Arcanist. He's the next poker player, like he was saying.
Yeah.
And we were talking about sometimes I definitely chase good money with bad. I'm just like, well, that missed. I should now I should flip this card and try another AP. No, he lost. It sucks. Got it. Score the points.
Move on.
Yeah, score the point.
So I will say another reason I like the family is because I've been playing Ophelia for Bayou, and it's just a mirror faction. They just do a lot of the same things, and obviously same types of models. But are there any other family models you want to kind of shout out that you just kind of like playing with?
Yeah, so Nino is, like I said, a huge piece. He's paper, right? So lots of things, but he has deploy after deployment from the shadows, and you have to be careful with him. You can't put him out too forward, but he's making you money because he's giving you a lot of AP. The other thing that I think is really good is Pistoleros and Monster Hunters. So Pistoleros are just cheap AP, very cheap AP, but lots of AP. But Monster Hunters are really good. They've got Deadly Pursuit, which is a big thing. So any kind of extra movement, Guild doesn't have a ton of extra movement. So any kind of extra movement tricks coming hot. I'm not a Santiago fan, so I'll speak against a family member. Santiago, I don't get, so that could be just me. But his role for 8 stones is still a mystery to me.
Well, going on to our last keyword that we have the witch hunter keyword, and I have not seen Sonya played as a master, but I have seen her brought in as a secondary master, and I was playing a bubble crew and she burned the crap out of it, and that left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, she can definitely do that. I think so Sonya is one of those keywords that I think is kind of generally reviled, or not reviled, but just man, that's not good enough. And I think it's one of the keywords that changed function pretty significantly from the 2nd to 30. So I've been playing a fair amount of witch hunters because I have a lot of snowflake syndrome, and and I think they're actually pretty good. It might be shout out to Swamp Fiends. It might be one of Cody's like, this is good against newer players or middle tier players, but against good players it won't work. I don't know, but Sonya herself. I will speak to 2 things that I think get overlooked. Everyone remembers the blast. Everyone's like, "Oh man, Sonya blew me apart with blast," and she can certainly do that. But her keyword right? But her keyword doesn't have card draw. So, as a dependable plan, having 2 severes, 1 to hit and 1 to put down the max damage, not great. Just because it's not dependable, right? When you get it, do it, right? Blow their face off. I'm not trying to say that it's not a great ability. But the 2 things I think she gets underrated for is she has summons. She has a summon ability, which is pretty big because her dudes are pretty squishy. They're meant to be fire and forget missiles. So resummoning them is pretty important to her game plan. Like very important to her game plan. And the other thing that she has that can be super good that you need to maximize when you play her is Smothering Flame, which is if this model is a cruise leader, enemy models within line of sight reduce the range of their non-melee actions by an amount equal to the value of their burning condition.
Oh, so that's pretty good.
You want to leap. All of a sudden your leap is only 3 inches. You have a 6-inch you have a 6-inch bubble of a dispel magic or something. You've got your Oni, and you can summon from whatever 8 or 10 inches or 8 inches away, I think it is, right? All of a sudden that's 5 inches, right? All of a sudden your Tengu who's trying to command someone to drop in and interact is less. All of a sudden your 12-inch guns are only 9 inches, right? It's a really big ability, and a lot of that, and you put a lot of stress on your opponent's thinking by changing their positioning requirements.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's big, too, just because there's not a range to that. So it's just, hey, that's there, and that's just something that happens.
Yeah, if she can see you, she gets it.
Oh, so you do have to have sight.
I just line of sight, though. So you can block it with, like, forests and things. But one of the other things of her strength of her keywords are... there's a lot of speed, so she has a Witchling Handler, which adds +2 movement to Witchlings or Witchling minions. So Stalkers or Beaters suddenly become speed 5. The Witchling Stalker has unimpeded and suddenly is speed 7. The big boys, the punchers, the Witchling Thralls go to speed 7 as well. So suddenly you got a speed 7 guy who blows up if you kill him. So, he walks 7, charges 7, so he's 14 inches up, swinging with a sword, 15 inches away, maybe hits you, right? And then you kill him, then you take a damage and a burning. So she's pretty fast. Her totem is incorporeal and can walk 15 inches. So that's pretty fast and can get through a lot of stuff.
That is kind of a cool summoning mechanic, though, because you have to be on fire, and then she takes the fire to create these things. So it's kind of an interesting mechanic.
Yeah, and it's really good. One of the hidden things about it is it's a set amount of damage. So you're hard to wound. You cool. You know what I mean? Like, it's still 5 damage. You know what I mean? It's a willpower attack. Oh, you put me on a neg. Still 5 damage. You're a stone user. Right? You have 4 health. Okay, well, I did 5 damage to you. You can't stone to reduce the amount of damage. I mean, you can stone to reduce the amount of damage, but you can't put me on a negative. So you've got a 33% chance, depending on what's in your hand and what's been flipped, that you're still dying, right? It's it's a really key mechanic of her, and it's really, and there's a lot of incidental fire. Like her henchmen just light you on fire by shooting you. All of her witchlings demise does some damage and lights you on fire. All of her blasts light you on fire. There's a lot of blaze trigger, which is a light you on fire. So there's a bunch of ways to put fire out onto people. So it's pretty big, I think, to get at least one of those a game. If you can get two, great. But like you need, her stuff is shocking squishy, so you'll need to replace the casualties.
Okay. So what in her? So you're talking about some of the stuff that's like useful. I mean, in the story at least, Samuel Hopkins is like a big part of the story. Do you see him on the board a lot or no?
So I've used Sam, I think every game I've played with Witch Hunters so far, and when I played against Witch Hunters, he was there as well. He gets 3 shots. He has rapid fire, so he can discard a card and take a shot. He's unimpeded, speed 6, all very good. He has ricochet, so he can like shoot a guy and hurt another guy, and both of them get fire 1. So he comes in a bunch. I think unimpeded is one of the most underrated rules in the game, because people, when they're discussing cards, don't ever think about the board. And when there's forests and bogs and whatever else you're calling severe, like they just don't think about that. And I think it's really important in a game that has scoring in certain locations and different pools. Having severe is really important. So I take Sam a lot because he's another place to put out fire. Sonya wants fire on their things because then she ignores concealment and cover. So all of a sudden I'm using terrain to my benefit, but I keep a line of sight, goes away, right? So Sam comes in a lot. I use Sam a lot. I think he's good. I know he was thought of as poor originally. Once again, very squish, just dies. I mean, he has arcane shield and counterspell, like all of the keyword or most of the keyword, but that's not. So there's like there's some subtle hand discard management. So that's like part of the guild's themes is control. They control your hand. There's a lot of stagger. They control your movement. But he does a lot of that. He just lights stuff on fire and shoots it. I also want to... Sam's another good example of a guild thing that I think is part of the guild theme. His tactical action is creep along, which is push the model up to its movement towards a friendly model. That's very similar to a lot of guild things. Guild doesn't have a ton of leap, which is like an independent guy doing independent things, being like jumping through the air. They have a lot of like move towards your buddy, move your other friend towards your buddy, right? Like there's a lot of like, we're a team because we're just humans trying to beat the monsters. And so, which is why it comes back to guild as a fundamentals thing, because you can't just like, I leap 6 inches.
I think you're right there, because I think the more I analyze different games and different keywords and stuff, the more that I notice that when you have more criteria for something to happen in this game, you need to have more foresight, and you need to have more control over what your plan is, because that's less mistakes that you can make, because you have to be tight. You have to have stuff where it's supposed to be.
Right. You don't have a spider swarm that is like, well, I mispositioned by a little bit. I guess I'll just use my bonus action to walk 5 inches. That's fine. I'm going to just luck sack through this and flip a card and hope, right? Like you do flip a card and hope. That's the game. But
that's one of the things I definitely love about Bayou is looking at Bayou. There's so much just like out of activation movement and so much just pushes out of here and there where there's not many times where I can't somehow manufacture extra movement pretty easily.
Yeah. And there's still a lot of ways to do it in Guild. It's just not as easy. Clean. Yeah, it's just not as easy. Yeah.
You can't accidentally stumble on it, it seems, with Guild. It seems like you have to know where it is, and you need to have it in your pocket ready for that right moment. Yeah,
it certainly helps. I mean, there's plenty of times when I've dirtled an activation, and as I'm getting better at realizing my flaws in game and out of game, analyzing my games later, you're like, that was a wasted activation, right? Like I spent an AP just like standing there staring at nothing. You know what I mean? Like I didn't use his bonus action to move a thing because I had it in the wrong place, or I didn't have the anchor to push towards, or that kind of thing. So it's, I definitely think it's like a plan. It will help you build your plan ahead skills.
Yeah, and I think especially if you're a newer player listening to this, I will say that just kind of don't get discouraged by those wasted activations, because there's just a lot of times where you're going to go, oh, I want to hit this thing, and you go to hit it and you flip the black joker, and I'm like, well, crap, I'll just attack again. They're like, wait, I got butterfly jump, I'm going to jump away from you, and then you're just standing there, and that whole activation is wasted, and you can't get discouraged from that. Just remember and burn that into your brain with salt that I now hate this model and I'm going to kill it some other way next time.
Right. You'll learn every game you walk away from where you hit something new, you're like, the appropriate response, which is not always my response historically, but I'm getting better at, is what are my solutions to this? How can I walk in with a plan for something with butterfly jump, right? So not just like, well, but my turbo nerd executioner just ran up and swung at it, and now he just leapt away, or I flipped a 5-5 on my plus flip.
You've played Purist and Arcanist before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my buddy brought Iggy to the party, and I dove in with, I think it was a young Nephilim, but I dove in with a Nephilim on one of his models, and I got fire. It was probably Curious. And then he's like, cool, you're within 6. I'm going to push you 2 inches away. And I'm like, great, fantastic. This is fun.
Yeah, this is swell. This is exactly what I had planned. Yeah.
So, don't get discouraged, folks. It's part of the game.
Yeah, and you'll learn. And, you just have to take it
and move on.
And, I mean, you can curse. Like, it's fine, but it does get better. Also, the other thing that I would keep in mind that I am trying to learn to do better is the one decision feels terrible in the moment, right? You're like, you have what? But I had planned this all out, and that's the worst. But that's not how you score points in this game, right? There's you can recover from a bad decision, from a bad flip often, right? Like, there's plenty of players that are much better than me that would black choke or something stupid. Like, I was playing Ray of Third Floor Wars fame, and he was trying to hit my Ice Golem with a willpower attack, and I somehow beat him on this attack, I don't know, 6 times? Like, something ridiculous. Like, he should have pushed my Ice Golem out of the way so he could score Claim Jump. He could not do it. He just couldn't. Like, God's will was this Ice Golem was not moving. He still found a way to win, right? Because he could obey with Huggy, a silent one, who then arced through an ice pillar that made my guy slow that was going to score the Corrupted Idol. It was like, there is ways, right? It's easy to get discouraged. I do it all the time. I would recommend getting better.
You got to really stop beating your head against the wall. And I had this game against Tony where I was playing Whiz Bang, and Tony's bringing stuff in. I'm throwing a couple of things in there, and my stuff's dying. And I'm like, why am I fighting this battle here? Why don't I go do my schemes, get my points that way? And I ended up winning the game because I just gave up the fight and just went to go get points.
How many games do you figure you've wanted to give up about something that felt terrible, and then you win the game? Like, I figure it's probably a third, maybe.
Yeah. I was going to say probably close. I mean, I was thinking close to when I finally make that, as long as it's early in the game. Now, if it's late, usually you've already made that bed, right? Yeah. But early on, I feel if I make that decision turn 2, I feel like I win probably about 50% of those games.
Yeah, you can pivot pretty hard. And a 5-turn game, the first 2 turns feel the other day, Saturday night when I rage quit, we didn't even get through 2 turns. I know that was the wrong, on the light of day when I'm awake and not tired, that was the wrong decision. There was still a game to play. Yeah. But the 5 turns is a long time, right? You've not even played. You played less than 75% of the total game. You know what I mean? There's a lot of time for that error to not snowball, to come back around, to get better.
Yeah, so we've talked about the keywords, but one thing I do want to hit up real quick before we just talk general guild for a little closeout here is, what about these versatile models? What are some of the good ones, some of the ones you would recommend maybe people picking up because they do a lot of work for you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what my opinion is second, and I'll tell you what the general guild opinion is first, because I think that'll probably carry more weight. Guild Steward is loved, fawned upon, brought in many, many lists. Some people feel it's auto-clued. The big things he gives you is he gives you a heal and a focus. He can give you card draw if the enemy's dropping schemes. So things like Nelly, things like Guard that are making the other guy possibly drop schemes. or guard where they have to drop their enemy schemes. Right, he's making cards. He's card draw.
Yeah.
He also ends conditions and can add more focus. So he is a place to find focus for some of your bigger beaters. Many of your masters and some of your henchmen are pretty big beaters. I think that's can be too much. Like I said earlier, I'm a business guy, and guild stores sometimes can feel like too much effort for the gain, but a lot of people love him. A lot of people, the focus can go a long way on, like Sonya, where she wants to, maybe your plan is to try to land all these big blasts, or Lady J with a great sword. Focus goes a long way. The other big thing about him is if you kill him, if the enemy kills them, they get a 4/6/8 damage flip, which is cheatable as long as it's not on a negative. So, you just killed my 6-stone model with your Enforcer beater, and I cheated my Severe, and he takes 8 damage back.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah, seems fine. So Stewart's a big one. I do like Stewart. I know it sounded naysaying, but I think he has a lot of use if you need the condition removal. He is very good. I just don't think he's an every list guy.
Yeah.
The Emissary doesn't get a lot of love outside of Marshall, because Marshall has Dominators that can obey him, so they can make him get more attacks. He is a control piece to me. He can slow. He's got a 2-inch sword. One of the things that you'll learn as a new player is that 2-inch reach is relatively rare, and it can be really well used. So if you get to 2-inch reach, but out of their 1-inch reach, you're hurting their AP efficiency because they can't charge. So they have to walk for 1 AP, then attack you for 1 AP. And he has a way to give them slow. So he can be a very good control piece. He's got a great sword, so he can be a bit of a beater. I like the Peacekeeper. Is one of the ones that I'd call out. As I said earlier, I think his gun is really good and underrated. He also could just punch things. He's slow, so you have to bring something to mitigate the slowness. Some kind of push mechanism, some way to, like the printing press, maybe even burning, pushing 4 inches, something like that. That's the big versatiles that I can think of. Oh, Dr. Grimwell is the other big one. He's part of the Asylum keyword, which might someday become a real keyword. He can be a mix of beater and control, canned control. He has stagger, a lot of discard mechanic to him. The big thing is his bonus action is a move. Like a move for anything without a flip. So cards, things that don't require flips are really good, because then you can't Black Joker it. It doesn't drain your hand if you need a 6, which is about a third of a chance to fail. Like when I first started, I looked at a 6. I'm like, a 6 TN, that's all I need. Got it every time. But that's not mathematically true. It's like a third of a chance to fail. So he's really good. So those are the big ones. I would say Grimwell, Stewart. The Rider. The Pale Rider is the other big guy. Pale Rider's really, really good. His gun is amazing. It's a 245 gun, which is fine enough damage track. But the big thing is it staggers, which turns on a lot of things in Guild, which slows down your movement. And there's like movement duels, and like Grimwell, for instance, all of a sudden gets a free crow if you're staggered.
You get that injured on him too.
But the injured is the big thing. He also has one of his pulses of his bonus action is to do 2 irreducible damage and burning. So irreducible damage is really good because it gets around armor, it gets around hard to wound, it gets around soulstone use, right? It's irreducible is really strong, especially in a big pulse. So the Rider, and he's quick and unimpeded, right? Speed 7 has Ride with Me. And in a faction with low mobility, or at least challenging mobility in a lot of cases, his mobility and his injured really good.
Yeah, even the riders that aren't as good as some of the top tier ones, they still have a lot of playability, just because, like you said, the speed, the Ride with Me, and then just a lot of their abilities just make them worth bringing in some situations where you just need that extra movement and speed. So yeah, that was a really cool model that I was looking at too.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, he was one of the models that got nerfed in the move to GG1 because his blow up, his Revel in Conflict was like ludicrous. It was like 2, 3, 4 irreducible plus burning plus slow, I think, in a 6-inch aura around him or pulse around him. And now his major one is every friendly gets to make a charge or a melee action in that area. So he's really good. Like, for me, the big thing is the mobility and the injured gun, but the pulse also very good.
Yeah, injured at range is super good. I've been digging that I've been bringing a lot of Sammy for Bayou, and she does the same thing. We're just putting out injured at range and making you discard cards. People hate it.
Right. And in the Marshall recommendation, he's undead, so the Domidors can obey him, so you can take more shots with that great gun. So he's really good that way. And like injured turns on like all your rat 4, not there's not rat in this game, all your stat 4 or 5 guys, or like your stat 6 guys, all of a sudden are 7, 8, 6, 7, 8s, 9s. All of a sudden your 10s are hitting, your 10s are beating their 13s, right? Like
Yep.
it gets pretty good. Or you have a 10 or 11 and just all of a sudden that's an 18, so they need to get to a 12, 13 to even put you on a neg. And so their stat, that means an 8, that means a high moderate, so all of a sudden the dice math or the card math gets favorable.
Yeah, so looking at the guild faction, we'll start off with what are your top 3 masters, and this doesn't mean the most powerful, but what are 3 masters that you really enjoy bringing and you've had some good success with?
So for me, I am still on the straightforward master, so I like family a lot, would be on my top 3. I would say Marshall is up there, and I've really been enjoying Witch Hunter, because I enjoy that aggressive play style. Like they're meant to be aggressive. One of the things I meant to say about Guild, just to get a feel for what keywords, especially as starting out, go to the weird website, check out the masters. There's a little blurb of like gameplay and lore, and that gameplay tells you what they designed the crew to do. And I think one of the major failures that people can make, or at least I made, is like you just like put together this arcane combo or just pick random models because it's a model and don't have a strategy to start. And so if you just use the, I'll say, default strategy of the stated keyword design and just kind of plan to play it that way, I think that's a good start. I mean, there's still, you need to make variations, you need to learn opponents. Like there's still a long way to go, but at least coming with a plan, as opposed to just like, I have these 5 models, they do things, yay. Having like, okay, I want to play these models like this.
Talking with some game designers and just people in the industry, when they design the game to work a certain way, if you don't follow that guideline, you tend to, if you don't know what you're doing, making the work harder for yourself. You're making it harder to play, the toy that they designed for you to play a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And things have, one of the good things about Malifaux is the models have a lot of depth in a way that some other games don't have, right? Like an individual trooper doesn't have a lot of depth in War Machine. But there's a lot of options. You can play them mixed ways, but I found a lot of my recent success has been, so you have the scheme pool, scheme strat, and deployment, and like having a sound strategic goal, or at least a strategic goal at all. Even if it's a crap strategic goal, at least you have a strategic goal of how you want to play this pool, and then build towards that. So then your models have roles, they have things they're trying to do, and so they're not just dirtling nearly as much, right? Sometimes the strategic plan was bad or it didn't match, but like if you at least have a strategic plan, you can did my build match that, did I play around it, but there's at least a stated goal, other than like, I want to play and I want to score points. You're like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. For Witch Hunters, for me, I enjoy that like aggressive, like I'm going to play, these dudes are going to like jump in your face, I'm going to do a little bit damage, go ahead and murder me. Like I'm buying space for Sonya, I'm buying space for Sam to shoot you. They're doing damage. Like I enjoy that. And then when you get to me, I'm going to make new ones. Right.
Yeah. When you look at the guild, which we kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you had to pick 1 or 2 masters just to say for a new player, like, hey, this is a great starting spot. And, maybe the models are already in the 3rd edition boxes. Maybe it's easy to play, or at least start with that keyword. Which keyword would you recommend?
So if you've never played miniature games, I would 100% recommend Marshals. Marshals look cool. They have a lot of forgiveness. They heal a lot. They've got defensive tech. Everything has a gun, just about. So you miss position, they can still shoot. Right? There's a lot of good things there to start with. The other one that I would recommend is either Augmented, because once again they've got interesting activation order and positioning challenges. But I also think Family will teach you good If you can dig in and deal with the losses and learn, I think family is a great learning keyword. If you will get burnt out and like you're not ready for the long haul of coming up the curve, martial or augmented, they will give you more forgiving wins, right? Like they'll give you more. They'll either give you like everyone likes to win, right? Like losing over and over and over again sucks for everyone.
Oh yeah.
So I would say martial and augment are probably the best. And if you're already know miniature games a little bit and understand positioning, I would recommend family.
Yeah, and the more I look at guilds, the more I'm thinking like if you're a new player to Malifaux, and especially if you maybe don't have a ton of tabletop experience, I'm starting to lean towards guild maybe being a great starting point, because we've looked at all the keywords and we see how much fun you can have with the basic strats of, say, Sonya, or the basic strats of the family, and then as you grow in the game, there's a lot of growth and ceiling that you can reach for when you get to people like Lucius and when you get to people like the Guard and other keywords like that. So it's really a good starting faction for a lot of people to get into this game with.
Yeah, I think it does have a lot to offer. Although I think a lot of the factions can have... I think there's a lot of breadth in each faction.
Well.
Yeah, I think, like I wouldn't start with Mama Z regardless. You know what I mean? Yeah, I wouldn't start with Sui. Like the pigs are super cool, but there's a lot of moving parts there, right? Like maybe you want to start with the Kin or Maz Crew, Trixie, right?
Yeah,
like you don't start with Big Hat, right? Like you scale into Big Hat. You don't start with Sandeep, right? That's too many moving parts. You don't start with Rasputina. She's control is not a skill that you know when you start. You start with a Karis. You start with the augmented, right?
Well, you got to have knowledge to control.
Yeah, exactly. And control is like a patience game. And most time when you're starting out, you're like, the first couple turns of patience and setting up things is not what you would generally want to do. Not what I want to do when I started. I'm like, okay, I'm playing this game. Let's murder some stuff.
Dude, you don't got to tell me about it. Like that's one of the hardest things when you're starting out, where you just want to, especially if you're coming from like War Machine, like you and I have played before, where you're just like, I just want to punch this in the face. And then they're like, cool, but you're not scoring any points. And you're like, what? Yeah.
That was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn is attrition is God, right? In War Machine, attrition is the rule. Like if you get behind on attrition, you lose, just flat out. Like you might lose by scenario, you might win on clock if the attrition is slow enough, but and recursion, yeah, exactly. Like attrition is king. So I'd be like, oh, I'm down. They killed my model. I lost because I only have 5 models or 6, whatever, 8 models. They killed 2 of my models. I lost. Like the snowball started. I can't possibly come back from that. Not correct. And I don't know about Guild. I don't know about Guild Ball. But since I was made by War Machine players, I assume that it's got a similar attrition.
Yeah, it's very, very similar.
Once the attrition ball starts, and like attrition certainly hurts you. I'm not trying to naysay attrition as like a.
Well, with Guild Ball, it was once you were down on activations because the models don't come back till the next turn. So you get away from a little bit of that War Machine feel bad, but once you're down like 1 or 2 activations, the turn gets really out of control.
Yeah. And you can, and there's stories when I was first starting about, especially Tui, where like, I have no models left, but I scored all my points, and you spent all your time murdering my models, so I win.
Yeah. But
Guild is a good faction. I think Guild, I've really been enjoying my diving into Guild and learning about it, especially having played Arcanist first. It's interesting playing different things. Like, for instance, Guild has guns everywhere. Guild, like, lots and lots of guns. Arcanists don't. You know what I mean? So, like, and I played Circle and War Machine. So, like, Anomaly. So, guns are amazing. Like, they are completely underrated in Guild. Like, but it's only stat 5. I can't make sure it hits. Like, yes.
One of them are going to hit.
Yeah, you have 12. Like, or not. You have, like, 7 shots, 8 shots, whatever. But you have 2 of each, right? Like, yes, I get what you're saying. But there's only so many Severes in the deck, and there's only so many Severes in their hand. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, Guild, one of the things is the rate of fire.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, so why does Guild get such a bad rep in the community? Because I've talked with a lot of Guild players who, they say there's a lot of playability and you can do really well. So what do you think are some of the holdups or mythos out there about them?
I think there's a couple things that are driving that thought. One is their movement abilities aren't as arrow prone, right? Like we were talking about. You don't have leap, you have consolidate power, right? So I have to have planned ahead, which means more mistakes, which tabletop games, war games, everyone makes mistakes. Even the best players make mistakes. So having a easier button on fixing mistakes gives you more recovery from a mistake, from a failure. So that's a real weakness. I think that's a real weakness. Two, I think guild players have trapped themselves into an all-star mentality. So I don't know how many internet discussions I've seen that are, I play these same 5 models in every crew. I always lose. Guild's bad. I mean, guild might be bad. I don't think so, but like you're doing the same thing over and over again. like poor, and it's not working. So it's, or like I saw an argument, and that happens a lot on the internet. I saw an argument about Marcus being bad. A guy said Marcus was bad, but he didn't use adaptive evolution. Like you're not using the main keyword ability. like Marcus might be bad, but I mean I don't think so. I think Marcus is really good, but if you're not using the keyword ability at all, then that doesn't count. So I think that's a big problem. I think there's a lack of
growth mindset.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of hangover of Sekine. There's a lot of things work this way, like and then they don't. The third thing I think that happens is people get a lot of guild has the opportunity to make super machines, right? Like Lucius, and they have like this. People kind of walking with like, I want to make this super machine, and I'm going to hit every 6, and I have 1,013s like Sonya. Like one of my problems with I think the way Sonya is played is people see her as this blast bot, and that's certainly one of her strengths. I'm not trying to naysay that, but like you don't have a clutch full of 3 severes or sometimes, right? There's not a lot of card draw there. So how are you hitting those 3? How are you getting the severe consistently? You know what I mean? How are you doing that consistently? And I think that's a problem. And I think people devalue. I think guild makes their strengths on building small wins. So you have a bunch of rat 5s or a strength 5 guns that are 2-3-5 crit strike guns, right? Like that's standard profile.
Yeah.
You flipping off cards, those matter, right? Like those build up. I do 2 damage.
You're more of along the lines of saying that you're almost wanting to trade up a lot with the guild instead of, because from what I'm hearing you say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that almost some of the more expensive pieces, maybe they aren't as a certainty as maybe some of the other higher pieces, but it feels like from what you're saying with just some of the lower stone models, you can sometimes punch up a little bit and take those more expensive models and get a good trade-off.
Yeah, that's my current working philosophy. I believe that the guild design is that they're the everyday man. They're humans. They're basic humans. So they're going to win not through being a monstrosity. They're going to win through, I have 6 dudes shooting a lot of crappy rounds at you. It's kind of like an Imperial Guard mindset, or
it's interesting.
Or like I'm going to each of my dudes individually are tissue. I can have 1 guy in one place that's 8 wounds tissue. I can have 2 guys at 4 wounds each in 2 different places that are tissue. If you're a melee beater, having the 2 4-stone guys in 2 different places makes it harder for that melee beater to murder me, because the melee beater has to get to me positionally. You know what I mean? Like I think that's, but people don't think like that. Maybe there are people that have told me on the guild chat that those 4-stone models will die immediately. They always die immediately, and I'm like, I haven't found that. Maybe that's my competition. Maybe that's the way I'm playing it. I don't know. Maybe I will find that. But so far, from my experience, I think that's the strength of guild, is that Dash's summons are subpar in a lot of cases, or more challenging to get through. But he's got a 2-4-5 axe. He can focus for a free action. He's got a lead line coat built into him. So all of a sudden that dude's standing there, whacking your face in with an axe, turn 3 and 4 doing stuff, right? Like the Lady J's, the Sonyas of the world are like doing stuff, but like, the Death Marshal, sometimes I have fast. like that's pretty good. Having fast is good. Now I get 3 2-3-5 shots, or I walk, like I was playing against Mei Fang. I walked him into a aura and I killed Sparks with my first shot because Lady J missed with hers, right? Like, so that cards just came up bad. Like, I should have hit by the numbers because I'm a 6 versus their 5 or 5 versus 5 or whatever it was. I had focus. I should have hit by the numbers, but I missed because cards miss sometimes. But I had 2 more backup shots with this Death Marshal, right? And the Death Marshal let me push a little bit because I had Death Marshal Recruiter. And, it was all these small advantages are what you're building, as opposed to like, I'm a Spider Swarm. I charged from across the entire world and I had a built-in onslaught and I got double pluses to my flip and I've murdered 3 things in this first turn, right? Like that's not.
I think when you're looking at the way your crew and your faction set up, when I see like I'm looking across the table and I see that they're going to out damage me if I'm trying to play that game. So you have 2 options. You can either go with like the Lucius and Nelly build, and you can just be like, I'm not going to play that game. You're going to have to play this weird game I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to try to, win through your weird attrition of just throwing bodies at them, you probably want to try to figure out how to get as much plink damage in as you can. That way you can whittle down the important pieces of that other crew. So I think that's the way you got to tackle it if you go about it.
Or don't lose them till turn 3, right? AP become more valuable as time goes on. So all of the masters are pretty strong, right? So I'm Perdita, let's say. I'm gunning away turns 1 and 2. Hopefully I've eaten your Scheme Runners, which drops your AP pool. My Pistoleros are literally hiding at the back of the board. Like, they're just standing there focusing with their 1 AP that they can focus.
You made them out of the tree line to go finally out during turn 3.
Right, exactly. But when they start moving, they're fast. They can Aporel into each other. All of a sudden they're sprinting 20 inches down the board. Turn 3, right? Like, and then, okay, you have the decision. Are you trying to kill Perdita? You don't kill Perdita, she's going to start gunning off your big guy's face pretty quick, right? Okay, are you going to spend your AP to do that? Are you going to spend your AP to score? Or are you going to use your AP to hunt down my Pistoleros, right? And you can make those choices, right? But but turn 1, you're like, I'm just going to murder that guy that's standing there because I can murder him turn 1, and then he's useless. Then those stones were used, right? So I think I've been finding more success by playing those cheap models back. You have to save them, and I think Guild needs that
use
AP
that terrain
because they can't.
They can't. I've done that with those important models that you don't want to die. You need to keep them alive for stuff, especially your weaker models. Don't make it easy for them to kill them. Use line of sight blocking terrain. Use your cover and concealment, and a lot of times that's going to be enough to keep your weaker things alive at least into turn 3 and 4.
So it's a small advantage, right? So if they do go get them, which they could do, there's a lot of stuff that can go murder thing in this game, right? Like, but make the AP hard. Make them have to flip use their 10s and 12s to kill this dude that they've had to run all the way across the board. Now they can't get back to scoring places, right? Like, that's the kind of advantage build that I think Guild thrives on, and other factions probably do as well. I just felt in Arcanist I could make big swings better because each individual is an individual in Arcanist, right? Which fits their fluff. They're supposed to be these rebels that are like going against the grain and they should be independent, right? And the Guild is like, we are a team, we are Guild, right? Like we have our heroes, we have our Lady J's and our Sonias, we have our heroes, but we are Guild, right? Like together we will push back the monsters. And so I think you really need to build those synergies up to not just like synergy in like rule synergy, but I mean like in positioning, in AP growth, and in the fundamentals, the things that aren't printed on the card. Everything has walk, everything can interact, everyone has 2 AP.
Looking at it, I think that gives a lot of people a good jumping point for people interested in Guild and people getting into the game. But something that's cool that we got kind of coming up is we do have a couple of people that we're looking at either doing some streaming or actually some battle report type stuff. So we are looking at doing that, which, it takes a little bit of time with Malifaux, because the one thing I can't stand about some of the Malifaux streams and battle reports with just the length of it. Like, I feel like there needs to be a better job of cutting that down into a more manageable watching space. So that's something I'm definitely interested in working on with Malifaux battle reports in the future.
Yeah, I know that there's some other streams and content creators that are fighting that same fight, and one of the things out of the World Cup that's coming out is like you can watch the first 2 turns too for even today, even before you get that figured out. You can watch the first 2 turns and get a lot of good feel out of the game, right? So you can get a lot of learning from watching. So there's a Russian player that's playing Gildea. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. That has been showing off, like I said, Fiona Gage and showing this control style, and you can watch the first couple turns and you're like, oh, you're playing it like
cool.
that. Cool. And then like he's doing well, right? He's playing in big stage. He's like ranked 2 in Russia or whatever he is. So he's succeeding with Guild. So you can certainly succeed, but you don't. It'd be nice if it was a 30-minute like quick watch version sometimes, but you can extract out some of that goodness.
All right. Well, make sure that you guys are checking out the YouTube channel for Rage Quit Wire. We do have content going up there for lots of different things. We even have video formats of the podcast going up there each week. Also, make sure that if you want to support the podcast directly, make sure that you look at our Patreon page. We are in the process of getting new dice. Just obviously with everything going on, that's taken a lot longer than usual. So thanks for everybody that has signed up to be a patron and is being patient with that. And thank you very much for the support. But before we get out of here, Dave, is there anything you want to plug or say before we wrap this thing up?
The only thing I would plug is Third Floor War and Swamp Fiends as some other podcasts that I listen to regularly. Swamp Fiends especially, I think, does a good job of talking about underlying principles that you can apply to Guild, especially as newer players, right? Before you get caught up in all the models, rules, there's learning the base of the pyramid. Excellent.
Well, some of the things I like that Swamp Fiends does is they kind of talk about just some general, just gaming barriers that you have sometimes with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think one of the episodes I just listened to was some mental traps where they were talking about how, maybe a bad experience with a model, like you got wrecked by this model, you have now this over dramatized version of how good that model is, and you overreact to it.
Yeah.
So just good topics they have on that show.
Yeah, I really like them. They're good, and their Discord's been great. I don't know if you have a Discord or you're intending to go in the Discord world, but just thanks to all those content creators, I enjoy listening to your stuff through my busy work day and drives when I get back to having to drive to work.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks for coming on, man. It's been a blast talking with you. And until next time, folks, make sure that you guys are flipping cards and flipping tables, and we will see y'all next time.